12 ancient constructions, built with knowledge we no longer have. Some of them we still cannot fully replicate today. And that is not a theory. That is the conclusion of MIT researchers, German archaeologists, and structural engineers who have tested them directly with modern instruments. We are going to go through all 12, one by one, with the actual numbers and the actual findings. No aliens, no lost continents. Just documented facts that are more extraordinary than any supernatural explanation, because they are real. Some of them will permanently change the way you understand human history. If you value documented, deeply researched ancient history like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also comment below from which city you are hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, drawing from sources including the journal Nature Communications, published December 9th, 2025, where MIT Associate Professor Admir Masic and colleagues published a peer-reviewed study on Roman concrete from an unfinished construction site at Pompeii. Field sampling conducted between January 2024 and May 2025 under the authority of the Parco Archaeologico di Pompeii, and from the Cambridge Archaeological Journal, Volume 35, published July 24th, 2024, where researcher Martin Sweatman presented a reassessment of astronomical symbols and calendar systems encoded at Göbekli Tepe. These are not fringe claims, they are published science. Now back to the information. Number 1, Göbekli Tepe, southeastern Turkey. 12,000 years ago, before agriculture, before pottery, before the wheel, before any civilization we have on record. Someone gathered on a hilltop in what is now the Şanlıurfa province of southeastern Turkey and carved limestone pillars that weigh up to 50 tons each, arranged them in precise circular enclosures, decorated them with detailed relief carvings of foxes, scorpions, cranes, vultures, and abstract human forms, and oriented the entire complex towards specific positions in the night sky. The site is called Göbekli Tepe. German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first excavated it in 1994 after discovering earlier survey work by American archaeologist Peter Benedict, who noted the scattered flints in 1963 but did not dig. Carbon-14 dating, published by Dietrich and colleagues in 2011 in the journal Quaternary International, placed the site's construction between 9,600 and 8,200 BCE. That is 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 6,000 years before the first known writing system. It is the oldest known megalithic structure in the world, by a margin so large it changes the entire timeline of human civilization. There are at least 20 enclosures buried in the hilltop. Excavations, as of 2025, have uncovered only 6 of them. The rest remain underground. The remaining ones were deliberately buried by their builders, intentionally filled with clean rubble, animal bones, and carved stones. A deliberate act of concealment we still cannot fully explain. The pillars in Enclosure D, the most studied structure, are aligned toward the star Sirius. Astrophysicist Giulio Magli of Politecnico di Milano, in research published in an R. Karksev preprint in 2013, showed that around 9,300 BCE, Sirius became visible again on the southern horizon at the latitude of Göbekli Tepe after thousands of years below the horizon line due to the slow wobble of Earth's axis called precession. The enclosures appear oriented to mark exactly that appearance. Then in July 2024, Sweatman's team published in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal, showing that the V-shaped symbols on Pillar 43 in Enclosure D encode a lunisolar calendar with 11 extra days added to reconcile the lunar and solar year, making it the oldest known example of this calendar system in human history, predating Babylonian astronomy by more than 6,000 years. 12 pillars in Enclosure D may represent the 12 months of the lunar year. 0 permanent housing has been found at the site. No hearths for daily cooking meals, no trash pits typical of settled communities, no storage bins for grain because there was no grain yet. Agriculture had not been invented. Whoever built Göbekli Tepe did not live there. They traveled from somewhere across the landscape, dragged 50-ton stones across hilltop terrain using ropes, wooden rollers, and large coordinated labor teams, carved them with Stone Age tools with extraordinary artistic and geometric precision, arranged them in configurations encoding astronomical data, and then deliberately buried the whole thing. And they did this before they farmed wheat. In January 2026, AI-assisted analysis of high-resolution three-dimensional scans of Göbekli Tepe found that certain stone enclosures form near-perfect equilateral triangles across uneven terrain, indicating intentional mathematical planning and advanced surveying techniques that no one believed existed at this date. The knowledge was there. We just stopped looking for it because we assumed it could not be. Number 2, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Egypt, 4,500 years ago. 2.3 million limestone blocks. Most weigh 2.5 tons each. Some weigh 15 tons. A handful in the King's Chamber weigh 80 tons. The base covers 13 acres. The 4 sides align with true north to within 1/15 of a degree. a precision that modern GPS-assisted laser surveys barely exceed. The pyramid was built as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, who reigned from approximately 2589 to 2566 BCE. The chief architect was Hemiunu, Khufu's nephew, whose limestone statue was excavated at Giza in 1912 and is now in the Römer und Pelisäus Museum in Hildesheim, Germany. Construction is estimated to have taken approximately 23 years. In 2013, a French archaeology team led by Pierre Tallet discovered the world's oldest known papyrus scrolls in a cave at Wadi el-Jarf on the Red Sea coast. The documents were written by an official named Merer and date to the reign of Khufu, approximately 2500 BCE. They describe in daily logbook entries moving limestone blocks from the Tura quarry by boat along the Nile and a network of canals to the pyramid site at Giza. They include boat counts, worker meal distributions, and coordination with port officials. The pyramid was built using a documented, organized supply chain. That document, the Diary of Merer, is held in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo and is the most direct ancient testimony of pyramid construction ever found. A study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in May of 2024, led by geographer Haider Sheisha at Aix-Marseille University, mapped an extinct branch of the Nile called the Ardamat branch. It flowed within walking distance of 31 ancient pyramid sites, including Giza, using sediment core analysis and satellite survey, and dried up around 2000 BCE. It solves the transport question for the heaviest blocks. Without navigable water reaching the plateau, moving 80-ton granite beams from the quarries at Aswan, 800 kilometers south, by land would have been practically impossible at the required volume. With river access, it becomes brutal, but logistically executable. In 2022, French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin updated his internal ramp theory, first published in 2007, to incorporate findings from the Scan Pyramids project, a joint French-Egyptian initiative using muon tomography to image the pyramid's interior. That project detected a large, previously unknown void inside the pyramid's structure that aligns precisely with where Houdin predicted an internal spiral construction ramp would be. The Egyptian authorities have not yet approved invasive testing. The void is there. What it contains remains unknown. Number 3, Baalbek, Lebanon, the largest cut stones in human history. In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, 1,170 meters above sea level, sit the ruins of what the Romans called Heliopolis, City of the Sun. The Romans built a massive temple to Jupiter here during the early imperial period. To do it, they placed 3 limestone blocks into the western foundation wall. Each block is 19 meters long, 4.2 meters high, and 3.6 meters thick. Each weighs between 750 and 800 tons. They are called the trilithon. They are placed 6 to 7 meters above the current ground level in a foundation wall that required moving them into exact position. The largest mobile crane operating in the world today, a Liebherr LTM 11200, the specifications of which were published by the manufacturer in 2024, has a maximum lift capacity of approximately 1,200 tons at extremely short radius. Moving an 800-ton stone 800 meters uphill, placing it with precision at height, remains at the absolute frontier of what modern heavy lift equipment can do. In the quarry, 800 meters from the temple, the German Archaeological Institute, excavating in July 2014, found a third monolith beneath the Hajar al-Hibla, the stone of the pregnant woman, itself weighing approximately 1,000 tons. The newly found stone measures 19.6 meters long, 6 meters wide, and at least 5.5 meters tall. Its weight is estimated at 1,650 tons. Guinness World Records certified it as the largest known megalith from antiquity. The excavation team, led by researcher Margrethe van Esse and Dr. Janine Abdelmassi, had to stop the dig when the trench became dangerously deep. The stone is still partially buried. No one knows how it was intended to be moved or who intended to move it, because the stone's edge quality proved poor on one side. The German team concluded it was abandoned due to a structural flaw that would have caused damage during transport. No written Roman source describes how the trilithon stones were moved or placed. No engineering drawing survives. Pliny the Elder mentioned Baalbek in his Naturalis Historia of 77 CE and said nothing about the megalithic platform beneath the temples. Researchers at Ancient Civilizations, Org, in a 2024 synthesis of available evidence, concluded that the method of transporting stones weighing 800 tons or more uphill for 800 meters requires an estimated 2,000 to 5,000 coordinated workers, using ropes and wooden sledges, and even that is theoretical, never experimentally validated at this scale. Some researchers also note the possibility that the massive stone platform predates the Romans entirely, and that Roman temples were built on top of an earlier pre-Roman foundation. That argument remains unresolved in the archaeological literature. Number 4, Pumapunku, Bolivia, 12,600 feet above sea level. On the Bolivian Altiplano, near the southeastern shore of Lake Titicaca, part of the Tiwanaku World Heritage Site, lies a complex of shattered stone blocks unlike anything else built in the ancient Americas. The site is called Puma Punku, Gate of the Puma in Aymara. Carbon dating places construction after approximately AD 536. The Tiwanaku civilization, which flourished from roughly 500 to 1000 CE, built it. The four largest sandstone platform slabs weigh between 130 and 180 tons each, the 180-ton block being the largest pre-Columbian stone structure in the New World, according to the Geopolymer Institute's 2019 study. The andesite H blocks, the precision-cut modular pieces that define the site, were quarried 90 kilometers away on the Copacabana Peninsula across Lake Titicaca. The H blocks are what stop engineers cold. They are cut with right angles so exact that every block is interchangeable with every other block of the same type, maintaining a flat level surface and tight joints across the set. Researchers Jean-Pierre Protzen and Stella Nair, in their 2013 Kotzen Institute publication, The Stones of Tiahuanaco, tested stone tool replication. Stella Nair succeeded in carving a small cross design to matching precision using obsidian and quartzite blades, but only on soft andesite fragments, taking considerable time. Bronze tools, which are harder than stone, proved largely ineffective against the dense hard andesite used at Puma Punku. No tools have been excavated at the site that match what the cuts require. The blocks were also joined by metal clamps, poured as molten metal directly into pre-cut T and I-shaped grooves on the stone surface, meaning the builders operated portable smelting equipment on site at 3,800 meters altitude. The alloy in the clamps contains nickel. Bolivia has no natural nickel deposits. In 2019, the Geopolymer Institute's peer-reviewed paper in Ceramics International, authored by Joseph Davidovitz, Luis Huaman, and Ralph Davidovitz, presented scanning electron microscope evidence that the andesite H blocks contain organic carbon matter. Volcanic andesite, formed at high temperatures, cannot contain organic carbon. It burns off in the magma. The presence of organic matter suggests the material is not quarried stone at all, but cast geopolymer concrete made to resemble andesite. If correct, this completely reframes how the site was built, not carved from quarried blocks, but poured and shaped in molds on site, explaining the otherwise inexplicable uniformity. The paper is published, peer-reviewed, and currently challenged by other geologists. The debate is live. Number 5. Roman concrete. Harbor of Caesarea and the Pantheon, Rome. 1st century BCE through 2nd century CE. The dome of the Pantheon in Rome spans 43.3 meters in diameter. It has stood unreinforced since approximately 125 CE. Modern reinforced concrete domes built with steel rebar typically require maintenance within decades and significant structural intervention within a century. Roman harbor walls at Caesarea Maritima, poured into the Mediterranean Sea around 22 to 15 BCE, according to ancient records cited by the Jewish historian Josephus, remain structurally intact after 2,000 years of saltwater immersion. The key was concrete, and until 2023, we did not fully understand why Roman concrete worked better than ours. In January 2023, MIT Associate Professor Admir Masick led a team that published Hot Mixing, Mechanistic Insights into the Durability of Ancient Roman Concrete in Science Advances, a journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. They analyzed samples from a city wall in Priverno, southwest Italy, that dates to Roman occupation in the 4th century BCE. Inside the material, they found small white chunks, limeclasts, previously dismissed as evidence of sloppy ancient workmanship. High-resolution spectroscopy and chemical analysis proved they were intentional. When cracks form in the concrete and water infiltrates, the calcium-rich limeclasts dissolve into solution and recrystallize as calcium carbonate, physically filling the crack from the inside. The concrete heals itself over years and decades. The technique that creates these clasts is called hot mixing. Dry quicklime and volcanic pozzolanic ash are combined before water is added, generating an exothermic heat reaction that locks unreacted lime into the matrix. Then in December 2025, the same team published in Nature Communications, based on fieldwork at Pompeii's Regio 9 between January 2024 and May 2025. They found an intact ancient construction site, buried and preserved by the eruption of Vesuvius on August 24, 79 CE. Piles of dry mixed quicklime and volcanic ash sitting beside walls that were still under construction when the mountain erupted. The exact recipe, frozen in time. The process Vitruvius described in De Architectura in the 1st century BCE was confirmed. Modern Portland cement, the standard global concrete material, cures rigidly, cannot self-repair, degrades within 50 to 100 years in saltwater, and produces approximately 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions during manufacture. MIT's Masick has since founded a company called DMAT to commercialize Roman-inspired concrete. The ancient formula is now a pending modern patent. Number 6, Sacsayhuaman, Peru. Outside Cusco, completed before 1533 CE. 3 massive zigzagging walls of irregular polygonal stone climb a hillside north of the Incan capital of Cusco at 3,700 meters elevation. The outer wall alone is 360 meters long. The largest single block weighs 120 tons. Stones fit together in interlocking, irregular polygonal patterns, no two the same shape, with zero mortar and joints so tight that a piece of paper cannot be inserted between them. The quarry is approximately 3 kilometers away. Transportation of 100-ton stones over rough Andean terrain without wheels used ramps, wooden rollers, ropes woven from plant fibers, and human labor coordinated through the Incan labor system called mita, mandatory service periods owed to the state. Spanish colonial records from the 1500s estimate between 20,000 and 30,000 workers were employed over multiple decades of construction. The polygon fitting is deliberate seismic engineering. The Andes sit on the meeting of the Nazca and South American tectonic plates, one of the most active seismic zones on Earth. When a major earthquake hits a mortared wall, the mortar cracks, the blocks lose their binding, the wall collapses. A polygonal interlocking wall redistributes seismic force across multiple irregular contact points simultaneously and allows the stones to flex and resettle without collapse. In the colonial period, earthquakes that struck Cusco, Spanish-built structures with mortared rectangular stone collapsed. Incan walls of the same era stood. The 15th century Spanish chronicler Pedro de Chiesa de Leon, who documented Sacsayhuaman in his Chronicle of Peru, wrote that the construction defied belief, not because of magic, but because of the sheer coordinated scale of human labor it required. Large portions of the complex were dismantled by the Spanish after the conquest of 1533 to harvest stone for colonial church construction in Cusco, meaning what survives today is a fraction of the original structure. Number 7, the Antikythera mechanism, Aegean Sea, approximately 80 to 60 BCE. In 1900, sponge divers from the Greek island of Symi were sheltering from a storm near the island of Antikythera in the Aegean Sea when they spotted a wrecked ancient ship on the seafloor at 60 meters depth. They recovered marble statues, bronze vessels, amphorae, and coins dated to approximately 60 to 50 BCE. Also retrieved was a lump of corroded bronze and wood, roughly the size of a large shoebox that nobody understood. In 1951, Yale historian Derek DeSola Price began the first serious scientific analysis, published in a landmark 1974 paper in the Transactions of the American Philosophical Society. Inside the encrusted lump were more than 30 interlocking bronze gears, their teeth cut with a precision that required techniques nobody believed existed in antiquity. The device was a hand-cranked analog computer. Turn the crank and it modeled the motions of the sun, the moon, and at least 5 planets. It did this through an interlocking system of differential gears, whose engineering principles were not supposed to appear in human history until the 17th century CE. It calculated solar and lunar positions, tracked the 4-year Olympiad cycle of the Panhellenic Games, and predicted eclipses using the Saros cycle, a period of 223 lunar months, roughly 18 years, which the Babylonians had identified, but the Greeks had refined. In March 2021, a team led by Tony Freeth at University College London published a complete working reconstruction of the mechanism's front gear system in scientific reports, showing how separate gear trains calculated the motions of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The bronze gear teeth required cutting precision at a scale that most historians of technology believed was not available until medieval European clockmaking in the 14th century CE. Nothing comparable has been found anywhere in the archaeological record between 60 BCE and 1300 CE, a gap of approximately 1,400 years. Price famously wrote that finding the Antikythera mechanism was like finding a jet plane in the tomb of a pharaoh. The gears show wear from actual use. It was not made as a model. Someone operated this device regularly, and then it shipped with a cargo of Greek statuary, ultimately sinking in the waters between Kythera and Antikythera, on a route archaeologists associate with Roman trade ships carrying Greek cultural objects. Number 8. Machu Picchu, Peru, built approximately 1450 CE. The Inca built a royal estate on a mountain saddle in the Peruvian Andes at 2,430 meters elevation, hemmed between Machu Picchu Peak and Huayna Picchu Peak, surrounded by vertiginous slopes that drop hundreds of meters on multiple sides. The site receives roughly 1,900 millimeters of rain per year, a figure comparable to rainforest climates, falling on steep terrain that would ordinarily destroy any structure within decades through erosion, landslide, and water infiltration. The site has stood for nearly 6 centuries. Why? Civil and hydrological engineer Ken Wright, who studied the site for 15 years and published his findings in a 2013 paper in the Practice periodical on structural design and construction, Concluded, the answer is underground. Between 50 and 60% of the total construction effort at Machu Picchu is invisible. It is below your feet when you walk the site. The terraces are not just agriculture. Each terrace contains subsurface layers of crushed rock, then gravel, then sand, a designed filter system that captures rainfall, prevents soil saturation, slows erosion, runoff velocities, and channels excess water into lower terrace fountains. The main drainage canal is cut directly into bedrock. The site's principal water source is a spring at 2,457 meters, higher than the site itself, channeled through a stone-cut canal 175 meters long to a distribution point that feeds 16 known carved stone fountains in descending sequence down the terraced slope. Wright's calculation, the system could deliver about 300 liters of water per minute at peak flow. Every stone building in Machu Picchu also rests directly on bedrock. The Inca cleared all topsoil down to living rock before laying any wall. No mortar connects the tightly fitted stone walls. As with Sacsayhuaman, the technique is earthquake resistant. In a zone crossed by the Vilcanota fault system, that was not an accident. Number 9. Derinkuyu Underground City, Turkey, Cappadocia, 7th to 8th century BCE and later. In 1963, a resident of the Turkish town of Derinkuyu in Nevşehir province was renovating his home and knocked down a wall in his basement. Behind it was a tunnel. That tunnel led to another, then to rooms, then staircases, then to a city, 18 floors deep, 85 meters below the surface, the equivalent of a 25-story building dug straight into the volcanic tuff rock of the Cappadocian Plateau, capable of housing up to 20,000 people with their livestock, grain, wine, oil, and water during extended sieges. The site was open to tourists in 1969. Less than 10% of it is accessible. The Phrygians, an ancient Anatolian people, are credited with beginning its construction around the 8th to 7th centuries BCE, with Byzantine-era Christians significantly expanding it from the 4th to 10th century CE to shelter from Arab raids during the Arab-Byzantine Wars that stretched from roughly 780 to 1180 CE. Each of the 18 floors could be sealed from the outside, with circular stone doors, up to 1.5 meters in diameter and 500 kilograms in weight. Rolled into place from the inside, impossible to open from outside. Narrow approach corridors forced attackers to enter single file. Dead-end passages trapped intruders in confined spaces. Ventilation was managed through more than 15,000 small shafts, roughly 10 centimeters wide, most reaching down through the first and second levels, with a main shaft 55 meters deep, also functioning as a water well. The constant underground temperature of approximately 13 degrees Celsius, stable year-round regardless of Cappadocia's extreme surface temperatures, meant food stores kept naturally without refrigeration, and water stayed cold without ice. An 8-kilometer underground passage connects Derinkuyu to the neighboring city of Kaymakli. Nobody knows the exact current total extent of the complex because only about 8 levels have been fully mapped. Number 10, Stonehenge, England, Salisbury Plain, 3000 to 1500 BCE. On the chalk downs of Wiltshire, in the English county of Salisbury, sits a stone circle that has stood through the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, the Roman occupation, the Viking raids, the medieval period, the Industrial Revolution, and 2 world wars. The outer ring of sarsen sandstone blocks, each 13 feet tall and weighing approximately 25 tons, came from Marlborough Downs, 32 kilometers to the north. The inner bluestones, each weighing between 2 and 5 tons, came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, 240 kilometers away, across open water and hilly terrain. In 2023, a study led by Mike Parker Pearson at University College London published in Antiquity geochemically matched specific Stonehenge bluestones to quarry sites at Carn Godog and Craig Rosy Phelan in Pembrokeshire, Wales. Parker Pearson's team also concluded that some bluestones were dismantled from an earlier Welsh monument and transported to Salisbury, which would mean Stonehenge incorporated stones that were already ancient when construction at the current site began around 3000 BCE. A monument built from pieces of an older monument moved across 240 kilometers of challenging terrain. The structure's primary axis aligns precisely with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset. The monument, as we see it today, dates primarily to approximately 2500 BCE, though construction on the site began around 3000 BCE and continued in phases for 1500 years. Retired construction worker Wallace T. Wallington, beginning in 2003 in Lapeer County, Michigan, proved using concrete slabs scaled to the weight of Stonehenge bluestones that a single person using levers, pivot rocks, and rope could move 1 ton of stone 300 feet per hour, and could raise it to standing position using a counterweight and a shoring box, without machinery, without a team. Physics does the work when the principles are understood. A 2014 acoustic study by researchers at the University of Salford found that the stone circle creates a distinctive acoustic effect. Sounds produced inside the ring are amplified within and dampened outside, a property consistent with deliberate acoustic design for ceremonies or communication. Whether the builders intended this or discovered it empirically, No one can say, but the physics is documented. Number 11. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, India. Approximately 400 CE. Standing in the Qutb Minar complex in New Delhi, surrounded by the ruins of an Islamic mosque built in 1193 CE, is a 7-meter-tall pillar of wrought iron weighing approximately 6,000 kilograms. It was forged during the reign of Chandragupta II of the Gupta Empire, approximately 375 to 415 CE. A Sanskrit inscription in Brahmi script on its surface names a king called Chandra and describes his military victories, generally accepted as a reference to Chandragupta II. The pillar is 98% pure iron. It has been standing in open air through Delhi's monsoon cycles for 1,600 years. It has virtually no rust. Modern blast furnace iron always contains carbon, which creates iron carbide structures at grain boundaries, the microscopic starting points of corrosion. The Delhi pillar was made by forge welding together hundreds of small iron pieces hammered at high temperatures without a blast furnace, in a process that expelled carbon and incorporated a small percentage of phosphorus from the ore. That high phosphorus, low carbon iron does not corrode the way ordinary iron does. In 2003, researchers R. Balasubramaniam and A.V. Ramesh Kumar at IIT Kanpur published a detailed analysis in the journal Current Science. They identified a thin protective surface film of iron hydrogen phosphate hydrate, a compound known as misoate, that forms under the alternating wet and dry conditions of Delhi's monsoon climate, interacting with the phosphorus-rich iron surface. The film builds up over decades and then becomes self-maintaining. Modern attempts to replicate the exact microstructure of the pillar's iron using contemporary metallurgical processes have not yet succeeded because the specific texture created by ancient hammer welding cannot be exactly reproduced in industrial furnaces. The pillar was moved to its current location around 1000 CE, meaning it survived 5 to 6 centuries before being relocated without structural damage. Already the most rust-resistant iron structure ever created. No other ancient iron structure of comparable size survives from anywhere in the ancient world. India was the global leader in iron and steel metallurgy in the first millennium CE. The technique of producing what is called Wootz steel, an ultra-high carbon crucible steel that gave early Indian blades their distinctive watered silk surface patterns, was exported to the Middle East and eventually became Damascus steel, which European crusaders encountered in the 12th century and could not replicate. The Delhi pillar represents a different end of the same ancient Indian metallurgical tradition. Iron so refined it defeats time itself. Number 12. Mohenjo-Daro, Pakistan. Indus Valley Civilization. Approximately 2500 BCE. 4,500 years ago, in what is now Sindh province in southern Pakistan, approximately 35,000 people lived in a city with paved streets, standardized brick dimensions, and a system of covered sewage drains beneath the main thoroughfares that would not be matched in the Western world until Roman civil engineering 2,000 years later. The city is called Mohenjo-Daro, Mound of the Dead in Sindhi, though we do not know what its inhabitants called it because we cannot read their writing. It was one of the 2 largest known settlements of the Indus Valley Civilization, which by 2000 BCE covered an area larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined, stretching from northeastern Afghanistan to Pakistan and northwestern India, encompassing roughly 1 million square kilometers. Systematic excavation began in the 1920s under British archaeologist John Marshall and Indian archaeologist R.D. Banerjee, who first identified the scope of the site in 1920. The scale of what they found quietly rewrote every textbook that had been written about the origins of civilization. Every excavated house at Mohenjo-Daro had a dedicated bathing area with fired brick floors sloped toward a drain. Individual household drains emptied into covered ceramic pipes running beneath the street. Street-level drains, covered with removable brick inspection slabs, channeled wastewater into larger collection channels at the city perimeter. The system was inspectable and maintained by city workers who could lift the covers, clear blockages, and repair sections. The city's Great Bath measured roughly 12 meters north to south, 7 meters wide, and nearly 3 meters deep, and was constructed of fine fired brick set in gypsum mortar, waterproofed by a layer of natural bitumen. Stairs at both ends allowed entry. It is the oldest known public bathing structure in the world, predating any comparable Mediterranean example by at least 1,500 years. The bricks used throughout Mohenjo-Daro conform to a specific size ratio, 1 to 2 to 4, across the entire city and across all Indus Valley sites, including Harappa, 350 kilometers to the northeast. This standardization implies a governing body with the authority to enforce a construction standard across a region spanning roughly 1,000 kilometers. There was no known royal palace, no known central administrative building, and no evidence of warfare or military fortifications in the archaeological record. Whatever system of governance maintained a standardized brick ratio across a civilization scale area remains completely unknown. The Indus Valley script, roughly 400 distinct signs found on carved steatite seals, copper tablets, and pottery from multiple sites has not been deciphered. No bilingual text comparable to the Rosetta Stone has been found. We do not know what language these people spoke, what they called their cities, or what they called themselves. The civilization collapsed between 1900 and 1700 BCE, with cities progressively abandoned. Sediment core analysis from the Arabian Sea, published in a 2012 study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, identified a prolonged drought lasting 200 years that coincides precisely with the collapse window. So those are the 12. 12 structures, 11 different cultures, spread across 5 continents and 10,000 years of human history. None of them connected through any known cultural exchange, all of them producing the same response from modern engineers, material scientists, and structural analysts when studied up close. We do not entirely understand how this was done, not as a mystical statement, as a precise technical one. MIT published that conclusion in a peer-reviewed journal in 2023. German archaeologists published it in 2014 when they had to stop digging. IIT Kanpur researchers published it in 2003. The Scan Pyramids team published it when their muon scans found voids nobody had mapped. The UCL team working on the Antikythera mechanism published it in 2021. Each published gap is a documented failure to fully replicate or explain what ancient builders achieved. These are honest admissions from the best researchers in the world, working with the best equipment that exists today. What does that tell us? It tells us that ancient civilizations were not primitive. They were different. They had specific, deep knowledge in domains we abandoned and then forgot. Roman engineers did not know the word thermodynamics, but they understood through systematic trial and observation that mixing quicklime with dry volcanic ash before adding water created a material that behaved differently than anything they had mixed before. The Indus Valley people did not have a word for standardized building code, but they enforced one across a civilization-scale territory for centuries. The Tiwanaku builders at Pumapunku had no written engineering manuals, but the precision uniformity of their H-blocks implies a system of measurement, quality control, and production that archaeologists are still trying to reconstruct. Knowledge does not require the forms we recognize. It requires only that someone figured something out and passed it on. And here is the late detail. In 2017, researchers Julia Gresky, Julian Helm, and Lee Clare published a study in Science Advances, a journal of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, describing an unusual find beneath Göbekli Tepe. Hundreds of fragmented human skull bones, some bearing cut marks consistent with defleshing or ritual processing, mixed into the stone rubble that the builders used to deliberately fill and seal the enclosures. The people who built the oldest known megalithic temple on Earth did not just bury their monument. They put human remains inside it before they buried it. Whether those were the remains of honored ancestors, sacrificial offerings, or the founders of the complex interred within the walls they built, the researchers could not determine. What is determined is that 12,000 years ago, people who had not yet invented agriculture, who had no metal tools and no written language, traveled to a hilltop in southeastern Turkey, quarried and moved 50-ton stones, encoded a lunisolar calendar in the carvings, oriented their structures to a star that had just returned to the sky, placed human bones in the walls, and then buried everything underground so carefully that it would not be found for 10,000 years. They nearly succeeded. We found the stones. We still have not found the answers.